Hello, trumpet players. In this video, we're going to talk about what's more important in terms of priorities. Is it sound or is it expression? A lot of people will tell you that your sound is the most important aspect of your trumpet playing. And I used to believe that. Um, I was a good student in some ways. I actually flat out believed always what it was I was told. And some people may not believe that, but that's actually how I lived my life as a student. I didn't think there was any point in being a student if you didn't believe what the teachers taught. But as I got older, now this this story that I want to tell you goes way back before I stopped taking lessons, right? Um, how did I get to where? So let me state where I am today. Today, I believe that expression is the ultimate most important thing. Expression is the most important thing. And let's define expression, because expression is not something you box up and sell. Expression is when you have something to say and it gets said through the horn. So expression isn't just musicality. Expression isn't just phrasing. Expression isn't just style and articulation and vibrato. No. Expression is that honesty between what you have to say and what comes out of the horn. The closer those are to each other, that's expression. The better you are at matching what's inside of you, the better you are at expression. Okay? So let's go through my sort of expression life story. Do you remember in the mid-'80s when MIDI first came out? And this was about the same time, roughly speaking, as when shows in Las Vegas were going to recordings instead of live bands. And if you were there, if you were in school at that time, you might have been worried that these practices, the recordings and the MIDI stuff, was going to take all the future gigs away. And I had foresight, and I'm not smart enough to know these things, so I have to say that it was divine. I have to say that. I don't want to take credit for it because I'm not that smart. Okay. Um, I just knew. It's sort of a supply and demand thing, right? If so, what's the difference between live band and a recording? What's the difference between the MIDI and a live person? The live person and the recording are perfect, flawless. Perfect and flawless. And you can get the tone you want, and you can get all of that stuff. It can be, if you've got the money for it, right, to make the recording or to do sampling for the MIDI and all that stuff. They didn't have sampling back then, but they do now. Um, you know what I mean by sampling? They have today um, sound fonts that actually came from samples of actual instruments. So when you hear something that's performed MIDI, it's actually somebody that was sat in the studio and recorded that note for you. So So yes, the capacity for perfection, even with the sound, is there. But I knew even back then, I didn't understand supply and demand as well as I do today. But if you have a high supply of perfection, then perfection no longer has value. That's how supply and demand works. So the best of the best, it used to be before MIDI and before bands used to were replaced by recordings. It used to be that you would pay for the best players because they were capable of giving you something that nobody else was capable of giving you. They were capable of giving you perfection. Something just on this side of the human line of perfection. And it was rare. So those people who were that good would make a decent career out of sharing what they had because it was so rare. Supply and demand. There's a demand for the perfection and very little supply. Well, MIDI changed all that. Recordings changed all that. Even the way we do recordings today is less honest and less realistic. So you can have now recordings that are perfect. And so I already knew back then that the supply and demand thing was going to shift and that people would desire more live performances, more expression. When you have a society that's saturated in perfection, what they want, now that they've been spoiled with all this perfection everywhere, what they really want is something more human. And I predicted this back then. We have the same issue right now with AI. The same issue is coming up. Now, if you're not afraid of AI and you're the type of person that would be afraid, you should probably be afraid of AI. I'm not recommending being afraid, but if if you were the type of person that was scared that live music was going to be destroyed because of MIDI, then you're the same person today that would be afraid of AI replacing musicians today. But AI, first of all, it's supposed to be artificial intelligence. In my opinion, all of the artificial intelligence I've interacted with is stupid. It's not very intelligent. So they've got a long, long, long way to go. But imagine artificial intelligence putting out music today. Not good. Not human. And see, this is one of the things I've been saying that's wrong with academia today. Academia is about doing it right. Academia removes the culture out of the music, and it's all about doing it right, not about doing it how the culture dictates it. And so, anyway, I know this is a little bit weird how I'm saying this. We're talking about what's more important, expression or tone or sound. And I'm trying to explain to you how I got to where I am today, where I say expression is far, far, far more important than sound. And we're talking about it in terms of priorities. Expression is where the human part of your music comes out. That's what expression is. So, expression, if you have imperfections in your musicianship, those imperfections are part of your expression. So I want to give you an example. I mean, this is part of why I'm using sound as an example. I have, because of my teeth, I have to play on a mouthpiece that's really too big for me. I have to play off to the side, and I have to. What happens when you have a bigger mouthpiece is that there's more surface vibration, surface area, right? And I always have a tone that's got fuzz in it. Always, always, always. You don't hear it when I do my recordings because the microphone is about 6 foot away from my trumpet. And that fuzzy stuff is lost in that 6 foot. But yes, I've got a fuzzy sound compared to most people today. And that fuzziness, at first I wanted to try to get rid of it. That funny fuzziness is part of my character as a trumpet player. And don't get me wrong, with all of this perfection stuff, even with sound, sound is still important. I'm not saying sound is unimportant, but even with sound, um, we have an obligation to get the best sound that we can with perfection, with accuracy, with perfect rhythms. When it comes to perfection, we have an obligation to do the best that we can. So what we're talking about is what is more important. Where is that hierarchy? And I put expression at the very top, and it makes philosophical sense. Because all of those other things, your sound, your rhythm, your time feel, your dynamics, your phrasing, your style, your vibrato, all of these things should be tools that you use to express yourself. All of those other musical aspects fall beneath expression because they are simply tools that we use to express ourselves. If instead we approach all of that stuff as rules that you just do because you're supposed to, you are not expressing yourself. You see how that works? If you just, I was teaching a student today. This was a lesson I taught after I decided to make this video. He he had hired me to write a piece for him. It was his favorite song, very important piece to him. So he wanted a jazz arrangement of it. So I wrote this jazz arrangement of it for him, and then he played it for me today. He played the first line, um, and he wanted me to help him play it more correctly. And I said, "Well, why did you play it the way you did?" And he says, "Because that's how I feel it." I told him, "That's it. That is the goal. There is no more. There's nothing more correct than that." That's he's been listening to that song his whole life. He's older than me. I don't want to say how old he is, but he's been listening to this song his whole life. It's one of the most important songs to him. And he says he played it the way he felt. That's a done deal. Nobody can criticize the way he's doing it. Nobody. And be in authority. He's the authority on that song, of his performance on that song. He is. When at the end of the lesson, I told him, the only thing that might need to be improved is if you are not satisfied with how it sounds. Because he's already expressing himself. That's the end goal. For all of this stuff, for every style, every single bit of it, the end goal is that you express yourself. There are some exceptions we have to make for that when it comes to playing in an ensemble. I get that, because now it's not just your expression, it's your expression in the way that it fits with everybody else. That's what I meant, you know. Now, I don't think when we play with an ensemble, I don't think we lose all of our individuality. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I believe that we can, because what happens with a band, and I've heard bands like this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I've heard bands like this where everything was perfect and it was so sterile. Everything was so perfect and so sterile that you didn't appreciate the music. There was no music there. Music is a human thing. Music is an expression. And by the way, it's not just one way. That's one of the problems with these kind of bands that play so perfectly, is that they're completely oblivious to what's happening in the audience. There's a dynamic that happens when you're truly expressive. When you see in the audience telltale signs that you've touched their hearts. And you don't touch their heart with perfection. The only thing you can say about perfection is, wow, look at how good they are. But that's not expression. So when you as an ensemble collectively get together and everybody be expressive, it touches their hearts in the audience, and you can see on their faces and their body language and everything a response to your music that you now respond back to on a subconscious level. But if it's all about perfection, that cycle is broken. And I'm sorry to see that still today, when AI is looming on the horizon, that people are still putting sound at the top. Because here's what happens. The way we're talking about this is in terms of priorities, hierarchy, and priorities. If sound is first, then you don't do the stuff you need to do to be expressive, because you gotta have that sound. Whereas if expression is first, you can use your sound, different kinds of sound, different qualities of sound. You can get louder if you need to and not have to worry, I'm messing up my sound. You can get softer and not have to worry, I'm messing up my sound. And those things can make you more expressive. Once again, the end goal is to be, we still have an obligation to get better at expressing ourselves and still have that better sound. But if we don't make expression the first priority, then we don't make those minor sacrifices in those lower aspects. And what comes out is sterile. I hope you're understanding what I'm saying here. And so, I think a great example of this was the UTEP Wind Ensemble. The UTEP Wind Ensemble was not a perfect ensemble. Well, back when I was there, we did not have perfection as our strength. We had expression as our strength. And I said that this story goes back. I was blessed with some teachers that taught expression. My trumpet teacher, Sam Trimble, taught expression. Abraham Chavez, the conductor of the symphony, the El Paso Symphony, when I was in it, He taught expression. Uh, uh, Lawrence, uh, I forget, Lawrence Gibson, the university orchestra conductor, he taught expression. There were so many people, even my composition professor, in a sense, taught stuff that was in alignment with what they taught. And it was about expressing yourself. It wasn't about following certain rules. It was about finding a way to get what was inside of you out. That's expression. And so I was blessed with all of that. And also with the El Paso Symphony, we used to have. I don't know how true this is. We were told. I was told we were on the B circuit, and what that meant was that we had as guest soloists people who were either on their way out or on their way in. So, for example, we had Joshua Bell as a artist his first year that he was touring. Um, and we also had a lot of artists that were in their last years. And a lot of times those artists were less virtuosic than they were previously in their careers. But the depth of feeling that came out of their playing, a lot of them were piano players or celloists. Um, the depth of feeling, the depth of expression that came out of their musicianship, out of their performances with us, was so deep that you couldn't help but be touched. It's like what I was talking about. When you're expressive, you touch the heart. You're not just impressing people with how good you are. You're actually touching their heart. You're actually speaking to them in ways that nobody else ever could. And that's my background. And I had already embraced that when the MIDI stuff came out and the students are freaking out and all the future gigs are going to be gone. No, that's not how it works. But here's what I'm going to tell you. If you've always striven for perfection in your playing, a perfect sound, a perfect rhythm, perfect any of that, and I want to say it one more time, we have an obligation to strive for that. But if that's what you strove for over all else, over expression, see, there's a lot of people that won't risk their perfection to be expressive. They they prefer perfection over expression. And it's not good. It's no the connection, that human connection is gone. The only thing you can do with that is impress people. And that doesn't last. Now, there's nobody that's actually truly absent of all expression. That's a hyperbole. And I apologize if I ever stated it that way. But it's in gradients, right? And as we are talking about the supply and demand thing again. Oh, let me finish the thing about the UTEP thing. The UTEP wind ensemble, when I was in it, was playing music that would raise the hair on the back of your neck. And people responded as they should because it was extremely expressive stuff. Oh, I didn't mention the name earlier. Dr. Hofstetter was the wind ensemble conductor. He also taught expression. I was surrounded in those days by people who teach expression. And when we went to perform at not contests, but festivals and stuff like that, it had an emotional impact on people. And that was without the perfect intonation, without the perfect sounds, without the perfect phrasing, without the perfect rhythms. Because we made a priority of expression, our imperfections actually enhanced the performance. I have one more anecdote, because I do think that this pursuit of perfection is now commonplace in the orchestral world, and they validate it by doing what they do, right? I got to hear, when Bud Herseth was retired, I got to hear Bud Herseth on stage at Rice University, and the students would take turns, and he would play, and the students would play, and he would play, and the students would play. And what I heard from the students was closer to this kind of perfection I'm talking about. When he played, even though he was retired, you could hear the imperfection in his sound, but it was so alive. He took those excerpts, they were doing excerpts if I remember right. He took those excerpts and they came alive. You know, this reminds me of, I might have mentioned this on my channel before, a rehearsal. When I was at UTEP, I did all the ballet, I did all of the opera. And for the most part, I was first chair all the time. And usually it was the conductor, Abraham Chavez, the conductor of the El Paso Symphony, that conducted those performances. And he stopped the performance one time, and he said, every piece of music has its own character, and you don't do that music justice until you bring that character to life. And I'm going to repeat that because that pretty much summarizes everything I'm saying here. Once again, this is from Abraham Chavez, the conductor of the El Paso Symphony in the 80s and earlier. Wonderful man, wonderful musician. He said, we were probably playing a ballet or an opera, probably an opera. I'm thinking it was like one of those Italian operas. He said, every song, every piece of music has its own character, and you don't do that character justice until you bring that character to life. The whole idea of playing a piece of music is to bring life to the music. You don't do that with perfection. You do that with expression. So this is why I put expression first, over sound, over rhythm, over all of that stuff. All those other things are just tools that you use to express yourself. That's it. All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. I want to say God bless you. I know I haven't been doing these as often as I would like, but I wanted to make one today so that you could have something to watch on this channel. So God bless you. Have a great week, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.